Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing very good.
Awesome. We just finished talking about mentorship. We're very excited to have you with us today. So, if I guess I can give a quick introduction. But so Brian and I met on LinkedIn. He is not a veteran himself, but his daughter is married to a veteran, and your father is a veteran, correct?
Sure.
Awesome. So, yeah, he's going to talk to us about empathy, which is definitely a much needed skill. And I know the military helps develop it, but we can all learn more because it is the top needed skill in the workplace. So, take it away, Brian.
Hey, thank you. First off, thanks for giving me the opportunity to come speak to you all today. Appreciate this. Really, really respect what you do. Like she said, my dad is a was a Marine officer. He was in Vietnam when I was born, so he didn't get to hold his son for about 9 months until he got back. So it's it's amazing what you all do, and I have just a world of respect. So this opportunity to come speak is really it feels like a gift for me. Uh, I'm the I'm the talent development and leadership development manager at Land's End. So I don't know if you ever heard of Land's End. It's a small little community called Dodgeville, Wisconsin, and I have the best job in the world because I absolutely am addicted to the subject of leadership development, and the fact that I get paid to do leadership development is just thrilling to me. So I'm super excited to be here. So let me see. Now, all of my experience is working with Teams, not as much with Zoom. So I'm going to try and share my screen here and make sure that this works. So please bear with me because I've got a presentation that I want to put up here as I figure this out. So one moment, please.
No problem. I struggle with it every day and I use it every day.
Yeah, say Teams, I would know how to do this in a moment, but I'm not as good at. Yeah, there we go. Okay, let's run this. And
Awesome.
you can see my screen, okay? All right,
Yeah.
let's jump up here and then press play. Okay. All right. So as you can see, we're talking about empathy today. I want to show you if you're by the way, there'll be different times that I'm going to have you put something in the chat, or different times I'm going to have you turn your mic on and talk to me because I prefer a much more interactive kind of dialogue than you all just sitting here listening to me talk at you for an hour. That'd be boring. So I'd love, I don't know if any of your baseball fans, but you'd have to be quite a baseball trivia guy to know who this guy is. So as you can see from the slide, it says Ken Mako. Does somebody actually? Oh, good. Somebody. Oh, we got an Oakland A's fan here today. Is that what we got? So, um, Ken Maka was the manager of the Oakland A's from 2003 to 2006. So, hey, I'm in Wisconsin. I'm a Brewer fan. When we win the division once in a while, it's like, woohoo! It's pretty rare. His team, and if you know anything about small market teams in baseball, it's hard to win the division every year. In his 4-year run, he never finished lower than second. He finished twice first, and second, he finished twice. So in a small market team to have that level of success, being a Brewer fan, man, that's amazing. And he's doing it in Oakland. The interesting thing is, after the time was done, after his 4-year run, the general manager of the Oakland A's fired him. So here's what he said. He said, Ken has a disconnect with his players. So being a baseball fan, I was like, what in the world? You just fired a very successful coach. So I looked it up. I'm like, what happened? Why did you fire this guy? I mean, it's really hard to win your division, and he's always either first or second. So here's what happened. Look at some of these stories. Adam Melhouse came out and said, he didn't even speak to me for well over the last month. It's not an exaggeration to say he doesn't speak to me, not hi, not anything. He said it's tough to go to work every day knowing you're working for someone who doesn't think much of you as a player, and on top of that, doesn't even acknowledge you. Now, Major League Baseball teams, they're not huge. So can you imagine being one of the catchers on the team and the coach won't even acknowledge you, won't say your name, not even hi? I mean, how hard is that? But that's not what got Ken Maka fired. What got him fired was this: what he did to his players when they got hurt. So if you know anything about Major League Sports, hey, players get hurt all the time. When his players would get hurt in the media reports, he would start referring to them as non-entities, like they don't exist. Matter of fact, one of his best young players at the time was a guy named Bobby Crosby. He was 2004 Rookie of the Year. He got hurt so bad, hurt his back so bad that there was question about whether he would ever play baseball again. When Ken Maka was asked by a reporter about Bobby's future on the team next year, Maka said this, well, if he's back next year, that's fine. But if he can't go, someone else will take his spot. So how do you think? So here's where I'm going to ask for some interaction. You can throw this into the chat. Here's what I'm asking you to think about. Let's say that you're asked to do something, and as I understand it, all of you are still active service right now. You're still all in active service, and this group is designed to help transition into more of a business role. Am I understanding that accurately?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say that you get into your business role, and first day there, somebody says, "Hey, we're going to have a meeting up in this room. Could you help us and pick this up?" And you're all, you're in shape, no problem, right? But you know what this is like, right? You just pick up this box from you, and you turn, and all of a sudden you blow a disc. It happens. I got a friend who was walking down the stairs the other day and just turned the wrong way, and down he went. Right? It happens. You never know when it's going to happen. It's just crazy stuff like that happens in the world. So let's say you get hurt, and let's say you get hurt on the job, and let's say that you're hurt so bad you can't work. You're home flat on your back, and you start calling your HR department at this company that you work for, and nobody returns your calls, and nobody will help you get any benefits information, and nobody, your boss pretends like you don't exist. So in the chat, I want you to throw in what words might describe how you're going to feel if that's your experience. Worthless, let down, yep. Oh yeah, betrayed and abandoned. Oh, you're going to be mad, you bet, right? Unmotivated, yep. And what might be some things you're tempted to do? Toss that in the chat. What might be, you can feel disappointed, yep. Rookie there made a lot more than me. Sure did. Yep, you're gonna be tempted to quit. Anything else you might be tempted to do? If I got hurt on the job, yep, quit and disconnect, yep, and they weren't returning my calls, I would be tempted to call an attorney and say, you're not going to treat me this way. Yep, there it is, sue, you bet. It's like, I'm not going to let you treat me this way. Here's what I learned when I saw this story and I read about it, and what I think is one of the most important principles about working in the business world is, even if you can get great business results, if you can't also get good people results, then eventually you won't get to work there anymore. So even if you can get business, and I've seen this over and over again in my career, over and over again, I've seen people that could get business results, but you turn around and look in their wake, and their bodies in their wake. They have just hurt so many people. People don't want to work with them anymore. They're done. And over again, I've watched as those people eventually lose their right to lead in that company. Because even if you get business results, if you can't get people results, then the day is going to come when you don't get to work there anymore. So this is the world that we live in right now. And so this is such an important thing. Yeah, go ahead.
What would you define as people results?
Oh, good question. I'm actually going to focus it on the subject of the ability to really connect deeply with the people that you lead, so that you get the best performance and you keep them engaged. And as you can tell by the title of what we're talking about today, empathy is an absolutely essential piece of that. Because if you have an empathetic leader, you can connect with your people. Ken Maka couldn't. So let me ask all of you to toss into the chat here this. And by the way, thank you for asking a question. This will get a lot more fun if you guys interrupt me anytime you want to. I promise you, I won't take it personally. You've got a question, you can come mic on and interrupt me, or you can throw it in the chat. So, but let me ask you to toss into the chat, what is your definition of empathy? If you were trying to put in, and there's no right or wrong, it's just whatever the top of your mind is. So what's on the top of your mind? How would you define empathy? What do you think?
It's like being able to have emotion for others.
Okay, good. Emotion for others. Yep.
I'll chime in real quick. I would look at it as being able to have emotional intelligence and emotionally maybe I would even go as far as spiritually interconnecting with teammates, subordinates, people that are above you, and using that to support people, and then drive, essentially you're supporting them so that way they can be the most successful, and then the team is most successful.
Exactly right. You're talking about, it's always about their success. And I see a bunch of you jumped in here too on the chat. So you can relate to others' pain and problems, being able to comprehend others' emotions internally. Yep, this is good. Placing yourself in others. I like what you just said too, when you were on, just jumping on with your mic and talking about that connection piece again. That's so important. Understanding another's perspective, putting yourself in their shoes, being acknowledged. These are all great elements of empathy. So in our company, I don't know if any of you have ever heard of a speaker and a researcher named Brene Brown. She's exceptional and super intelligent and funny as can be. So Brene Brown has a 2-word definition that is so simple, and I want to give you this definition now, and it's what I want you to think about when we think about empathy. So really simple, empathy is about feeling with. That's her definition. It's not mine, borrowing it, but that's the idea that I want you to think about when you think about empathy. Empathy is about feeling with, and many of your definitions all have that as an element of it, right? So that's the basic concept of feeling, of putting yourself in someone's shoes. So I want to show you something that Brene Brown did. So I don't know if any of you have ever seen this, and I hope the audio works. Boy, I know how it works to do this on Teams. So I'm going to hit play on this in a moment. But I want you, if you're a note taker, grab a pen and something, because I want you to take some notes on this video if you haven't seen it before, and just jot down what impresses you, what strikes you, what is it that resonates most with you, and we're going to talk about it afterwards. But once I hit play, give me a thumbs up if the audio is working, because I can see over here. So I want to just see if the audio is working, and if it isn't working, just let me know and I'll see if there's something else I have to do. But let's take a look at this. No audio? Okay. Yeah, see, like when I start something on Teams, I have to hit a button that shares the audio. So I was wondering if there's something like that with Zoom as well. Let me see if there is. Advanced. Hold, please. Oh, there it is. Got it. Okay. Now, let's see if this works.
We got a comment. We have a comments in the chat, sir. I don't know if you may want to take a look at those.
Got it. Okay. Yep. No audio. Okay. So take a listen to this. Does this work now?
Yes.
Thank you.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful. and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Okay, so here I'm going to want you to go mic on, and let's talk about it. What part of that video struck you?
I think right at the end there, you know, even if you don't know what to say, just really letting the person know that you're there for them and that you're glad that they shared their story. Yeah, I think we get kind of caught up in the fact that, you know, we don't need to have the experiences that some person has gone through in order to be empathetic towards their situation, right? It kind of goes into connecting to a feeling within yourself that you think might be similar to the feeling that they're feeling towards that experience.
Good. Yeah, isn't that a powerful sentence? I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. So powerful.
I agree with Troy. One of the things that I have to fight whenever I've worked with my subordinates when they're going through problems, I was really bad at shooting. Oh yeah, you just lost your job. Let me tell you about the story when I lost my job. And while there may be some helpful things in there, that's not why they came into the office. You know, I have to fight that urge and actually handle their issue, not share another bad story.
Okay, good call out, Brandon. Really good self-awareness on that one.
Does anyone want to comment on when a fox said that she had an abortion and a little deer drew a silver lining on her cloud and said, at least you know you can have a baby? That shit was fucked up.
What people say,
that's yeah.
crazy.
There's yeah. I don't know what you would say to that. I mean, you wouldn't definitely say that. There's no. Yeah. Oof.
It'll be interesting when you get later into the content, you know, that those at least comments are really, I mean, striking when you hear them, right? And it sounds ridiculous, but it'll be interesting to see when we get into that content later, how easy it is for all of us to slip into at least. Now, we may not at least something like that. Oh, your marriage is ending. Well, at least you have a marriage. But it's interesting how often people do at least and say the words at least. So.
Yeah, I think
really.
I was gonna say it's situational. Like I feel like I'm
Oh,
really
totally.
good at empathy with like friends that I don't spend all day with. But when my kids come to me with something and I'm tired at the end of the day, like that is when it's difficult.
You are right on with situational. And we're going to ask a question toward the end about who is the hardest for you to show empathy with, because yeah. When my kids were young, I used to make them watch this video because I wanted them to learn this principle at a young age. And one of the things that my kids started using against me when they became teenagers was that whole, did you catch that part at the scene where the goat is looking down into the hole and he goes, yep, oop, looks tough. Want a sandwich? Instead of entering into the pain with the person, they stood at a distance and offered him a sandwich. My kids would say to me, Dad, don't be a goat offering me a sandwich. And we all knew what that meant. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm standing apart from your pain instead of entering into it. It's like, oh, dang. Yeah, you got it, kids. You're right. Sorry, Dad did that wrong.
Yeah, sometimes when you felt that pain yourself, it's hard to go back down into that hole. So you have to balance like revisiting your own pain versus showing that person the appropriate amount of empathy so that they can get themselves out of the hole.
What a great call out. It's so true.
Situational. Probably depends on how close the person is to you.
You
There are a lot of things that can affect it.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of like, well, just based on experience, like with different leaders, I've seen very empathetic leaders and then some leaders that just like lack empathy altogether. Like, I mean, sometimes it comes off as they try to put it as humor, but depending on the type of individual you are, might not go as humor. I mean, because I guess sometimes humor helps. Like when I broke my leg, they were like, I was like, hey, my leg's broken. Well, you got another one. And I was like, okay, that's kind of funny. Keeps my mind off the pain or whatever. But it all depends, I think, in context and the situation. Like with the abortion, you don't say, at least you can have another one with something, talking about, yeah, that's very powerful. So
Yeah,
I think it's
exactly.
how it's applied and when it's applied is very critical.
Agreed. Well, it'll be interesting to hear your perspectives on this next part, because, my experiences in the business world, I certainly was raised with a dad who understood, the military and brought a military perspective into the home. But in the business world, one of the things that I always challenge them with, and I want to have your take as we go through this next section, is to learn to see emotional responses in the people around you as valuable. Because in the business world, it's not viewed as valuable. So when I put that sentence up, people often are like, oh yeah, it's kind of weird. So here's the thing about this. I've been in my career for 31 years. I have been in thousands and thousands of meetings, just like all of you. You've been through so many meetings. And so I want to be really clear what we're talking about. We're talking about empathy for appropriate emotional responses. We're not talking about inappropriate emotional responses, okay? So this is the question sometimes come up. We're not talking about you're with someone and they lose their temper or swear at a teammate or call them a name or threaten them in any way. And unfortunately, even in the business world, that happens. So we're not talking about that. Empathy is not appropriate in that moment, okay? I want to be clear what we're talking about. We're talking about appropriate emotional responses. Have you ever walked out of a meeting and felt frustrated? You ever walked out of a meeting and had your feelings hurt by what they said or the way they said it to you, felt a little disrespected? You ever walked out of a meeting, felt anxious or embarrassed or upset? Well, every single person you are ever going to work with will have those same experiences. They are all going to have these appropriate emotional responses. So that's what we're talking about here. So I want to have you take your swing at this. So throw it into the chat for this one. So in the chat, I want you to answer this question. Based on your experience, what you know so far, how do you think most business leaders view emotions in a professional environment? And if you were putting one or two words down, what would you say? How do you think most business leaders view emotions in a professional environment? Just toss that into the chat, one or two words. Hindrance, yeah. Fake till you make it. Irrelevant, yeah. Be emotional in your own time, yep. Weak, emotional, unstable. They view it negatively, yeah. When we're emotional, men are passionate. Oh, interesting. Oh, balances with bottom line. Oh, if it balances with bottom line. Oh, interesting. Weak, unprofessional, yeah. So just so y'all know, I've taught this content now 16 times in the last 8 months in front of about 500 professionals in the business world, and I've only had 2 positive comments in the entire time.
Oh, wow.
2 positive comments. The same thing that you're all putting in here is what would they say? The top 2 answers are unprofessional and weak. Top 2 answers in all my time of teaching this. People in a professional environment tend to view it as unprofessional, and they tend to view it as weak. So if that comes out in a business environment, then here's my next question for you. What are some potential responses to emotion in a professional environment? You can throw those right in the chat. If they view it as this way, how do you think that leaders, and this will tap into your experience as well in your military experience, how do leaders in your past respond when they see emotion in a military environment, or what do you anticipate how they'll respond in a professional environment when they do see emotion? They think less of you, yep. No reason to bring personal problems to work, learn to compartmentalize, frustrated, avoidance, stagnation for employment. Oh yeah. Yep, you all understand. Lacks military bearing, they see you as selfish, yep. I think it'll fix, oh, great sentence, Jose. They think it will fix by itself. Oh man. One of you posted a comment earlier in the chat about the fact that people deserve great leaders, not great managers, and they need both, obviously. But man, that comment really goes to it. Leaders have to shift their view of this. They have to understand that when they see appropriate emotion, again, in a professional environment, that they have to move towards it. Yeah, not leadership worthy. Yep, exactly. So, and again, isn't this affected by your environment? How many of you are raised in a home? You know, again, I don't mean to, project. I have no idea how common my home experience being raised by my dad with his military background, but in my home with his background, and it was a different time period, emotion was the enemy. And if I expressed any emotion at all, like I'm a huge Packer fan, if I cheered, yeah, Packers, too loud, I was told to shut up. So all emotion was the enemy to be destroyed. So, and again, I understand that, but you imagine how that affects you, right? If you were raised in a home where emotion was not tolerated or accepted, then people get uncomfortable with emotion when they see it. And so in the business world, this happens all the time. They suppress it, ignore it, rebuke it, correct it, they become defensive. Yep. Sucked up buttercup. Yep. Yeah, our environment has definitely impacted how we respond when we see emotion in somebody else. Because emotion wasn't acceptable for me, I had to learn how to handle appropriate emotional expressions in others. I did not know it. And it really held me back in my career until I learned, because like you're all saying, it doesn't just magically evaporate when you see it. And your job as a leader, if you get into a leadership role where you are doing performance management, it is your job to help when you see that. You're going to move toward the yuck. So, and again, you don't have to take my word for it. You can just look at Forbes magazine. Forbes magazine wrote this article last year, September 19th, 2021. Empathy is the most important leadership skill according to research. Now, how many of you, and you don't have to respond, and just think about it in your own mind. If I would have asked you a question before you saw what I was speaking about today, and if I would have asked all of you, list the top 3 leadership skills you could start developing that will have the greatest impact on your career, how many of you would have put empathy as number 1? I mean, would any of you? I wouldn't have. Forbes magazine says absolutely number 1. Yep, I wouldn't have. So the question is why? What in the world did their research reveal? Well, look at this. Look at what their research revealed. It is a direct connection to innovation. Here's what they discovered. Innovation, when people reported that their leaders were empathetic, they were more likely to report that they were able to be innovative themselves. 61% of employees compared to only 13% of employees with less empathetic leaders. So mic on for me on this one. Why? Why do you think that when you have an empathetic leader, that your innovation rates rise dramatically on a team than when you have a less empathetic leader? What's your thought?
So I would say that your people are different, different tools or what do you call it? Like gears in the machine, right? And but they're human, and they have hopes, dreams, anger, all kinds of different emotions. All these different things are going on, and I want to say, occasionally in the military, we see some leaders that are like, okay, this person's getting divorced, I need to get involved in that to support them or whatever. So it's I want to say it's kind of hit or miss. It's either really bad or really good in the military. But there's this need to understand that deep thing that's driving the people. And there was a guy, kind of a big CEO guy, that had I can't remember the guy's name, but he owns a bunch of companies, and I think that what he said something was like, the very first thing that I'm going to do in a business that I buy is I'm going to get to know that director of HR and to know those intimate things. Because if you have a manager that's just pissing everybody off, kind of like the baseball manager for the A's, it can absolutely just destroy a company. Mm-hmm. So I think we're seeing and this leads, I'm going to throw it back at you, Brian. I have a question.
Okay, yeah.
So I see, and I may be getting ahead of myself, so shut me up and keep moving if you need to. But Forbes is saying this, and I'm like, okay, and I'm seeing different like leadership gurus getting out there on LinkedIn. They're how well are companies catching up to the like the duh moment?
Totally depends on the company. So some are absolutely not understanding that the world has changed and not adapting to that. So, and other companies like mine have put all this time and effort into constant ongoing training so that our leaders, and that's where we started within our company, was all our leaders are getting constant empathy training so that we understand the world has changed. We have a diversified workforce now, a diversity inclusion. We've got people working in, I'm here in Dodgeville where the headquarters is, and I work with people in Massachusetts and all over the state in Wisconsin. I got people in Florida. I mean, and all of a sudden we're having to learn how to lead these spread out teams with completely different backgrounds. And if you don't bring empathy into that setting, and you just treat people like a cog in the machine, then you lose those people. So they cannot feel that way, and empathy helps to reduce that. It's a good question, Stephen. So team, what else? What do you think? Why does an empathetic leader create an environment where innovation happens? What else do you think about that?
When you can be truthful to yourself about who you are and truthful to others, then you're more likely to put forth your best ideas because you feel they're going to be appreciated for what they are and not shot down automatically.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, I also think that people are able to act more natural, be themselves, and they don't feel like they need to put up a front when they're presenting themselves or their ideas and worry that they'll be shot down or something.
Yeah, because innovation involves risk, right? You're going to innovate or even put forward an idea, that's risky because you don't know how your boss is going to respond to that. But when you know you got an empathetic response or boss, then you know that you can risk it. And so that's what's directly linked to innovation, which, by the way, again, it is the constant theme of the business world is innovate, 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 because everything changed 2.5 years ago. Everything's different now. We cannot do things the way that we did them before. It's not that world anymore. So if you're not innovating, you're falling behind, and then eventually you're not going to be there. So that's why innovation is such an important thing. And empathy is, as you can see, empathy is not the only thing that creates innovation, right? It's only 61%, but it is a significant driver of innovation. Look at else. It's a driver of engagement. Have you all heard the phrase quiet quitting? You all heard this phrase? It is everywhere in the business literature. People showing up, taking a paycheck, but not bringing their best to work every day. So they are disengaged at work. So, but when they have a boss that's empathetic, like you've been talking about with your stories, like, I'm really here for you. I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm entering into what you're going through. That raises engagement and drives performance. So empathy does that. Empathy is a key factor with retention, inclusivity efforts, and work-life balance. So this is what we know. So how do we, if you like to read some of my favorite books, these are some of my favorite business authors. And again, these business authors are all writing and talking and speaking about empathy right now. So Daniel Goleman, one of you mentioned emotional intelligence. He talks extensively about empathy. So if you want to read and you like podcasts, he's got lots of good stuff on literature in the business world. And he talks so much about empathy. Patrick Lencioni is hilarious. If you ever get a chance to hear him, the middle guy on the top, he is amazing. He writes so much about empathy. And then Brene Brown, as we've already quoted, Joseph Grini, James Collins. James Collins writes some of the best business books out there, and they all talk about empathy. Matter of fact, even the head of Apple said this: people will try to convince you that you should keep empathy out of your career. Don't accept this false premise. So it's time for you to participate on something. Do you have a scrap piece of paper by you? I don't know if you have like a little sticky pad. This is what I want you to grab if you got one of these. Or just a scrap pad or something you can tear off that's small. And I want you to write a little formula that this is what we teach, simple little formula on how to practice empathy no matter what's going on. So you write LUV, oh, I know it's always hard to see, boy, LUV, and write it up and down on the side of this, LUV. Simple little formula. This will change your relationship if you apply this. I've been working on this for 25 years, and it will change your relationships if you practice this little empathy model. So simple to learn. Okay, so the L. Next to the word L, I want you to write the word listen. So just write the word listen. If you want to take more notes, sometimes people do, you can, but just write listen right there. Now, I'll tell you right now, as you can see, it's practice active listening. You know, we run courses on how to do active listening. So I can't give you all of this in 1 second, but I will give you this one piece of information, everybody. Okay, remember, I want you to think about this. Don't respond in your own mind. I just want you to think the answer to this question. Are you a good listener? Don't respond. I don't want to know. Don't put it in the chat. Okay, don't want to embarrass anybody, but I just want you to think, are you a good listener? So here's the problem. In America, 96% of all Americans think they are above average listeners. Let me say that again, okay? For those of you good with math, right, some of you are getting this. 96% of all Americans think they're above average listeners. I'm sorry, that's not mathematically possible. 50% of us are below average, and we don't know it. 50% of us. So I just want you to be thinking, what if I'm one of those people that is below average and I think I'm above average? So just hold it loosely, okay? That's all I'm going to say. Like I said, we run entire courses on that one, but it's not mathematically possible. Let's go on. So next to the U, I want you to write the word understand, okay? Understand. Now, I'm telling you right now that I'm applying this to business relationships and business work relationships, but it works in everything. It works in marriages. It works with significant others. It works with your children. This works with any relationship you want to apply this formula to. You will see how powerful it is. So understand, and this is what empathy really is. Empathy is listening to understand, not respond. Now, any of you yeah, you have a question?
Well, yeah, there's a well, I've heard this before. But you just said it. It says listen to don't listen to respond, listen to comprehend. So kind of think what the person's saying, and then you take it. But most people, like, they don't hear something they like, they just, well, I don't like it because blah blah blah. Yeah, so a lot of people do that. I'm guilty. I admit I'm guilty of doing it myself. I think everyone does it. So
yeah, well, I struggle with it a lot. I admit that I struggle with it a lot. Okay, just so you all know, I am not even pretend like I'm very good at this. When I'm listening to people, I'm often formulating my responses and waiting for them to pause and take a breath, and that's not empathy. That's not empathy. Matter of fact, I've often said that what I should do is I should get this phrase right here tattooed right on my finger right here. So it runs down the side. It says, listen, understand, not respond. So that when especially when I'm talking to my kids and my dad finger comes up, I can read it right there. It says, listen, understand, not respond, and just put my hand down and keep my mouth closed. Okay, because I struggle with this. So just being really honest with you, because that's not empathy. Empathy is listening to understand. And so you're trying to understand the answer to these questions. What are they feeling? Why are they feeling that way? What emotion am I seeing or hearing? And what's causing this emotional reaction inside of them? Because remember, what's our 2-word definition? Somebody throw it in the chat. What's our 2-word definition of what empathy is? Empathy is 2 words. Feel with, thank you. You cannot feel with someone until you understand what they're feeling, right? Make sense? By the way, Larissa, thank you for your honesty. Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, you cannot feel with someone until you understand what they're feeling. It's interesting. You know, I'll put this out here. In our company right now, there's a tremendous emphasis on diversity and inclusion. Matter of fact, we bring in diversity and inclusion speakers regularly, and we brought in a man with a military background. Have any of you ever heard of a man named Eric Alva? Okay, so Eric Alva was the very first American soldier wounded in the Iraqi war. Almost died. So brought him in. He spoke to our company. It was all virtual. Eric Alva is in a same-sex marriage. He was in the military. You know your military history? Do you know what policy was in place back in the Iraqi war? Don't ask, don't tell. Remember that? Do y'all remember the don't ask, don't tell policy? It's like, we won't want to know, so don't tell us, and we're not going to ask you. And so one of the consequences of that policy, and he told us this, and again, I'd never thought about this. He said one of the consequences from that policy was he was never allowed to put a picture of his partner on his desk, ever. If he would have, and some people did, you would be thrown out of the military with no benefits. Now, the man was permanently, he's lifelong disabled because he almost died for us. But he couldn't put a picture of the man that he loved on his desk. And then he asked all of us a question that I'd never in my life considered. He said, and I want to ask you this, and again, don't respond, but just in your own mind, how many of you have a picture on your desk or by your desk right now of someone that you love? you know, someone important. Maybe it's a screensaver. You know, I've got a picture of my wife. I got a picture of my kids. Okay. What if the policy changed? Let's say you go to a business and you got a picture of the person that you really care the most about in the world, and the boss comes by and says, take that picture down. If I ever see that picture on your desk again, you're fired and you will have no legal recourse ever to get anything from us, because that's what the policy did. And he said, how would you feel? I want you to toss it in the chat. How would you feel if the company that you work for said it is illegal and immoral for you to love the person that you love? And if you ever put something up that shows us that, you, Justin, I'm going to jail. Yeah, that's exactly right. Right? It's like it. Do you feel with a little bit? Do you feel with? That's empathy, right? You're going to feel like all of these things, not human. Guess I'm fired. They never cared, right? Not accepted. And you're feeling with. It made all of us in that moment feel with him. And that's what needs to happen for the issues that are so prevalent in our world today. Empathy drives positive changes when you actually feel with somebody. So how do you get to this when you don't understand, right? Here's what I want you to think about is use summarizing. So what I hear you saying is, and you summarize back to them what you hear them saying. So here's a common scenario that happens in the business world all the time. Probably happens in military briefings. I don't know. Maybe it does. Happens in the business world all the time. You're in a meeting and all of a sudden, I'm sitting at my desk and all of a sudden one of my coworkers comes back and they slam their laptop down on their desk and they're clearly upset, clearly angry. And you go, hey, what's wrong? And you get them talking, because I see emotion and I'm going to listen to that emotion and try and understand what they're feeling. And I'm listening and I listen to them and say, well, I was in this meeting with this cross-functional partner and here's what they said to me. And I go, oh, okay. So what you're saying is you were embarrassed when they said that to you? So I'm doing right what's on the screen. I'm summarizing back to them. So what I hear you saying is, and you're listening for the yes. If they say, yes, I was so embarrassed, you got it. But many times you'll do this, especially, somebody already mentioned their kids. I do this with my kids all the time. So, so when your boss said that to you, you felt embarrassed. And like, no, not really embarrassed. Then you go right back to, okay, help me understand. Help me understand. Remember your LUV, to help me understand. And then, oh, okay, so you're angry because they told you this project was important and you spent the last 3 weeks working on it. And then you go to the meeting and all of a sudden they say, oh, we don't need it after all. That happens a lot in the business world. And they're like, yes, total waste of my time for the last 3 weeks. Great. Okay. So now you understand, and I'm warning all of you, okay? You are now in the danger zone right here. You've listened and you understand what they're feeling, and you are now in the danger zone. Matter of fact, one of you, I think it was Brandon, already mentioned one of these things. There are 4 things we do wrong all the time that screw up empathy right here. Mistake number 1 is trying to fix it. Mistake number 1. This is what we do all the time. We go right into fix it mode. And it comes, I want to warn all of you, all of these, they're not personal. They come from a good place, right? You see someone in pain and you want them to feel better. That's what it comes from. It comes from a good place. You want them to feel better, but trying to fix it is one of the most destructive things you can do to somebody. It's like I do with my kids all the time. It's like, oh, well, next time your boss says that, just say this to them, right? And we give them little pithy advice, and usually when you do this to someone, you try and fix it and you try and fix their problem instead of empathizing with them. You watch them close their mouth and they just start nodding, because in their mind they're thinking, no, thanks a lot, Captain Obvious. I couldn't come up with those 3 things without you. Geez, right? And they shut down to you. Okay. And again, it comes from a good place, but it is destructive. The other thing that you do is this one, silver lining it. Mistake number 2. This is right from that Brene Brown video. You try and silver lining it. So yeah, I'm guilty too on that. So this is where you're listening to them and you feel bad and you're like, oh, well, at least it didn't happen in front of the CEO. Well, at least the other people still like you, at least. Right? And we're trying to make them feel better with that at least sentence. So here's what I want to ask all of you to do. This is a participation moment. You don't have to turn your mic on, but I'm asking all of you to do this with me. On the count of 3, every one of you, I want you to say the words at least with me. Okay? On the count of 3, you don't have to turn your mic on, just do it where you're at. On the count of 3, we're going to all say at least. Ready? 1, 2, 3, at least. Thank you for whoever turned your mic on. Appreciate that. Now, let that be the last time those 2 words ever come out of your mouth. Let that be the last time those 2 words ever come out of your mouth. Now, here's what's going to happen with some of you. Want me to tell you what's going to happen? I've been teaching this for 8 months. You want me to tell you the stories I hear? I literally had a manager walk out of the training doing that exercise and contact me the next day and say, Brian, you won't believe this. I went on the floor, I was working with a call center, and all of a sudden, when my employees started telling about a frustration, and I literally said, at least, and caught myself. Okay. So it's easy to look at those scenarios and think, I'd never do that. You just watch, you listen. How many times words at least are on the tip of your lips about to pop out and you're like, nope, I'm not saying it. Let it be done. Don't try and silver lining. It's not going to help them anyway. The third one, and this is the one I was already talking about. One of you talked about, I think it was Brandon who said, it's easy to spin it around on me, right? It's like, oh, hey, I can see what's wrong. Oh, I just found out my mom is in the hospital. Her cancer's back again. And what does the person say? It's like, oh, I know exactly what you're feeling. Our pet bird Fluffers is really sick right now. We got to take her into the vet. Kids are crying. Everyone's sad. And then we turn it around, make it about us. We tell a story about us. It's like, nope, none of that. Not what they need. The most damaging of all is what's called invalidating their emotion. If you like to research things, go Google the phrase emotional invalidation. You'll find over 1 million websites. It is one of the most toxic things you can do to a human being. And you've all heard it. You've either heard it said to you or you heard somebody say it. They say things like, well, I'm sure it wasn't that bad. Or aren't you just being a little overly sensitive, a little overly dramatic? Or how about this one? The Frozen movie just screwed us all up because became a song. It's like, let it go, let it go, let it go. So how many times good-natured friends said that? Well, just let it go. Oh, is that all there is to it? I just let it go. Great, that's easy. Or have you ever been told in your life that you shouldn't feel that way? These are all examples of toxic emotional invalidation. And here's what it does to a human being. It sends the message that their personal subjective emotional experience is inaccurate, insignificant, or unacceptable. In other words, it's wrong that you feel that way. You can literally make a person feel crazy by doing this. You want to destroy any romantic relationship? Do this. Tell them that how they feel is wrong. You will destroy romantic relationships with emotional invalidation. So you're sitting here going, okay, so I can't invalidate their emotion. Let's say that you have a friend who talks to you about how stupid they felt in a meeting, and you're sitting there going, okay, well, Brian said in that training, I can't disagree with them. I can't tell them it's wrong that they feel stupid. So what do I do? What do I do? Do I say, yep, you're stupid. I got to agree with them, right? No, we're not doing that. That's not what we're doing. Instead, we're going to do this. Learn to validate their emotions. So on your sticky note, write validate. Okay, so you got your little sticky note. So it's listen, understand, and then validate the emotion that you're seeing. That's what you do. I'm telling you right now, you literally can change your relationships if you learn this simple little formula. LUV, LUV, LUV. You'd validate their emotion, and you validate it even if you don't agree with it. Let's say that person telling you that they feel stupid, you think is one of the smartest people you've ever been around. You don't think they're stupid. Okay, and this is where it's hard, but here's what validation is important. It's giving another person a direct and clear message that their experience is understandable, real, and logical given what has happened. Now, in my experience, I've taught this content in the company for 8 months, but I've taught it in other places for over 20 years. You know what I hear? One of the number one things I hear people say is, yes, Brian, but I would never feel that way myself. And I have two real problems with that sentence, because some of you, it's like, yeah, but I would never feel that way. Okay. First off, whoever said that your emotional reaction is the bar of all human existence? Whoever said that, right? If I wouldn't feel it, no other human should feel it, okay? Do you hear the problem with that sentence? Everybody get that? It's like, that can never come out of your mouth. That's just not okay. But the other thing is, you want to know the truth? Do you want to know the truth? If you had lived every moment of their life, you would feel exactly what they're feeling right now. If you had lived every moment of their life, you would feel exactly what they're feeling right now. Their emotions make sense to them because of what they've been through. So you validate it. So let's take that employee who feels stupid. You don't respond, just in your own mind again. You ever been left a meeting where you felt stupid? Well, one of my first business meetings, I was in this business meeting, and the senior leader in the room looked at me and called me an idiot in front of every single person in the room. you think I know what it feels like to feel stupid in a business setting? I know exactly what that feels like. And so if my friend came to me and I was listening and understanding, they said, I felt so stupid. Do you think I know what it feels like to feel stupid in front of your peers? I know exactly what it feels like. So you tap into what that feels like. And from that place, you validate the emotion. You say something like, there are few things more painful than feeling dumb in front of your peers. I'm so sorry that was your experience. Okay, because I know that I'm not, notice I didn't talk about myself, right? I didn't say, well, let me tell you about my story. I didn't do that. I tapped into the emotion of what it felt like to feel stupid in front of people. And from that place, I validated their emotion. Now, I'll tell you honestly, sitting here right here in this meeting, you can all intellectually nod and go, okay, yeah, this is easy to do. Okay. But when you're in the real world, a little bit harder. I want to show you just how hard it is. Okay. Some of you, this is going to feel really familiar. I'll tell you, first time I saw this, I laughed my backside off because this I can relate to. See how many of you can relate to this. Take a look at this.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like, there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't!
Try to see things my way.
Does that feel familiar to anyone else watching today? Oh my goodness. If I had $1 for every time one of my kids said, Dad, you're not even listening. It's like, oh, sorry. You're right.
But
you're
I
right.
think
Start over.
it's really good with the obviously, you know, it's very comical and extreme, but that feeling where it's just like, it is so obvious, like I know the answer, but you have to resist the temptation to solve the problem. And I think of that especially for my marriage. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I know the answer. So it's a thing.
We do the same thing in sales, don't we, Stephen? Fight that urge to think we know exactly what they need to tell us instead of us telling them.
Just take the damn nail out.
I think for all of us too, Brandon, you made a good point. Connecting all that is there's, you know, for sales, for our relationships, either with parents, wife, kids, or whomever, and then also from a leadership perspective, you know, the same people skills are, you know, I don't see much of a difference between one and the other.
Yeah, it's, in my experience, you know, this is, again, in my life, I can't even tell you how many times, because you see the screen that's up in front of you, I'm a fixer. I know this about myself. I jump to fixing all the time. And in my relationships, what I had to learn a long, long time ago is that nobody needs me to fix their stuff. They first need me to enter into it. And from that place, validate it. Now, the interesting thing, I'll tell you this. When you do this and you first demonstrate empathy in the relationship when they're in pain, many times you know what their question will be once you've empathized and they know that you've understood? They're going to say to you, what would you do? I find that fascinating because that's where we want to get to, right? It's like, I know the answer. But the reality is oftentimes they'll ask you once they know you've heard them. So
I gotta say, I can, that's one of the strange things I sort of learned on my own from the hard way is sometimes people will just tell you stuff. Like I had this, speaking to this woman and she would just tell me how busy her life was. She was a friend at the time, but not anymore. Anyways, she'd always tell me how her life was, how hard it was and stuff. And it was exactly like that video. And I think, well, one of the things I did, I don't know if it was wrong or right, but I like to say it anyways. It's like, okay, would you like for me just to listen to you, or may I offer some advice? And that's what I always say, like, because I don't like when people butt in and give me advice for stuff. So I always say that's like, may I offer you some advice, or may I offer help? Or would you like some help, or would you like for me to just listen to you? And then they'll say stuff from there. And surprisingly enough, she just wanted me to listen, and she just wanted to say how crappy your life was, but they don't want to fix, which for me is the strangest thing. But I guess that's some people.
That's
You
very
can't
common. Evan, that's a great answer. And I've seen people do that really effectively with their, like my wife does it with our daughters. She will actually say, okay, is this something you want my advice on, or do you just want me to listen? So your question intuitively that you've already learned is a wonderful question to ask. So, and like you said, many, many times they'll just say, I just want you to listen. It's like, okay. Then we just close our mouth and we listen. We give them what they need, and then validate it. Don't forget to validate it. You know what? That sounds really difficult. I'm sorry. I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just glad you told me. Which gets to this last point. I know we're almost out of time, so I'm just going to finish this up real quick. This is what validation sounds like in a relationship. You say something, you know, like that must have really hurt, or I bet that didn't feel very good when they said that to you, or I can't imagine how frustrating that was, or I can see why you'd feel that way. Simple. That's it. And you're done. It is, I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen with the goal of understanding. I'm going to use summarizing to feel with you. And then once I get it, I'm going to just validate the emotion that I'm seeing with you. And if I can, to tap into a little bit of what it feels like to be in that moment with you. This is what validation does. And here's what, if you Google it, you'll see all kinds of positive things about emotional validation. Look at what you get in relationships when people feel validated. They feel relieved and heard, understood. They feel better. By the way, that's what we're after anyway, right? We want people who are in pain to feel better. We want people that we care about to feel better. You know how you get them there? You validate the emotion. They just want to know that you've listened and heard. People in America are dying for just one person who they feel like really listens to them. Because people we just don't do this very well right now. I got some questions here at the end. I'll send this PowerPoint over so you guys, y'all can have this. But just be thinking about these questions as which of these is the hardest for you? The three in the bottom, is it listening the hardest? Is trying to understand and not respond the hardest, or is validating the hardest? Be thinking about that for your own self-awareness purpose. Think about any emotion you've seen in your coworkers lately, and think about how you can go cycle back to them and say, hey, can we talk about that? I could sense you were frustrated earlier. You want to talk about it? I'd love to listen. But you know how powerful that sentence is? Jeez, people just don't have that. And then think about, and you've all talked about this, it's situational. Some people, it's really hard for you to be empathetic, like Kevin, that story with I call those people like professional complainers. When you got somebody that always wants to talk about the woe is me and they never want to do anything, man, that's a challenge, right?
Yeah. And it's hard because it's exactly like that nail. And I've never seen that video before, but it's exactly like that. But they don't care. They just want you to listen to them. That's all they want. So that's all you do.
Exactly right. Yeah. Okay, I am done and we are out of time. So if you have questions, you're welcome to ping me on LinkedIn, or like I said, I'll send the PowerPoint over. You're welcome to. I love this conversation, and again, glad that I could be here today and have this conversation with you today. So
Yeah,
Hey, Brian. Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Hey, Brian, can you go ahead and drop your LinkedIn?
Oh, yeah.
Sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, sure can.
Now that was amazing, Brian. Usually we summarize it with just one or two takeaways, but I think there's going to be more than just one or two from this. Yeah, this was.
Thank you.
I feel like I've studied this topic many times, but you did such a good job of summarizing everything into the LUV. I have it on my laptop now, so
Oh.
I can look at it daily.
Thank you for saying that. By the way, your last assignment, everybody, is to put this on your monitor or your laptop. Thank you for saying that. I forgot to tell you. Yep. Mine hangs right there, so I never forget it.
Yeah. So is this the first military group you've presented this to?
It is, yeah. By the way, I'd love feedback from you all. I know we're totally out of time, but I mean, I would, and I have to run to a meeting anyway, but I would love to hear how content like this connects with people with a military background. Especially, again, knowing my background a little bit, I would love if you could give me some feedback. And again, I just threw my LinkedIn profile right in there. So I'd love for you to toss it in. Just private message me. I'll friend you and we can talk about it, because I care a lot about what you're all doing. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for an hour of your time. That was very generous of you, Brian. So everybody connect with him. If you guys have any questions, let me know and I can field them, or you guys can, connect with him and ask him directly.
thanks, everybody.
Have a good day.
Thank you.